City just played within themselves, managed the game well enough, bearing in mind that they're going into the winter period, so they have to protect themselves as such. But no, I think that would be over-egging it a little bit to say that Arsenal were better in the second half. They were exactly what we saw in the first. It's just that City didn't put them to the sword, didn't feel that they had to.
Interesting at full time was looking at Freddie Ljungberg, who wasn't all that active. I think you mentioned that as well.
I know.
Commentary. Smiling with Guardiola, and in some respects there's something commendable and mature about having that kind of perspective, but you feel like what Arsenal need are a few people lacking in perspective, a few men possessed who are absolutely sick with that result. And Freddie Ljungberg, it's not an attack on him at all, and he had a long time to get used to the fact, I presume, that this result was going to go Man City's way, but you sort of want him to give a brief handshake with Guardiola and down the tunnel to tell that team what he thinks of their performances, and there's just not that culture in this squad.
No, there doesn't seem to be that culture at all at the whole club, and that's the problem. I was just discussing it with Nathan there in terms of, if you look up the goal that Pukki scores against Arsenal when he breaks for Norwich, that first goal, there's 5 defenders, maybe 6 defenders in and around them. He scores the goal. The camera then pans to Ljungberg on the bench next to Mertesacker and another coach. And they're sitting back, looking at the tablet, reviewing the goal. No one says a word. I've just said to Nathan, it was like they were in the cinema watching a film. And it was incredible. No reaction, no debate amongst them. No reaction of Ljungberg to get up and castrate his players or to demand why they weren't. And so passive. And that passive nature, because he's a lovely guy by all accounts, it's a reflection of his team. They're just so passive. And everyone will say, well, listen, he's only just come in. I still argue, listen, it's not all down to him. Of course it's not. And you need time to fix things. But you've got to be culpable in that you were part of Emery's coaching staff. So I don't understand it. Normally when an assistant gets the job, it's when the manager moves on, having been successful, in a way that they're saying Arteta potentially will do if Guardiola has another sabbatical and leaves City. But what were you hoping really to achieve in terms of getting a new voice? Because it's not a new voice, you're not going to get that bounce. And again, it just seems that the priority is just, can we get in an Arsenal man who's a brilliant footballer, which he was, an exceptional footballer, and will live long in the memory of these Arsenal supporters. But again, I keep saying it, I'm sick of saying it. It's a different remit.
Because if you think of coaching, I presume you would have experienced this. Really good coaching is not just one big team talk. It's 1,000 small moments, like the concession of that goal you're talking about.
Yeah.
Someone's body position is off. Something could have been fixed.
It's a difficult one. I just feel that there's too many players now who lack an understanding in terms of how you can stop the opposition. I mean, we commented on it in terms of at the beginning of the game. For those goals that City scored, Arsenal had a back four, good distances between their midfield 4, and then Ozil at 10, Aubameyang at the point. So if you took a picture of them, I'd be saying, yep, that's exactly where they've got to stand. But the problem is, as soon as City move the ball and you've got to make decisions and adjust your body and make a decision whether you go out, engage, whether you drop your body shape, all that, they can't do it. And that's what's incredible, because this is Arsenal. I keep banging the drum. You're talking about the best defenders. You know, if you're picking a Premier League top defence, Arsenal's iconic one will be up there. Talking about top midfielders, Vieira, Petit will be up there, Gilberto Silva will be up there, and that's not even mentioning the likes of Henry and Bergkamp and them type of guys. So listen, they have fallen way below that. And the reality is now is that although these players are good individually, if you to put them in a mid-table Premier League team, I'm not convinced they keep their place week in, week out.
I mean, it is amazing. They're 9th, 22 points after 17 games. And bar Sheffield United, who may struggle to sustain this kind of form, Wolves can certainly keep things going. That puts Arsenal at about 8th. So they are now a mid-ranking team, really. And
yeah, but that's a reality, Joe. And that's what they need to do. I think to move forward, I think there needs to be a reality check to say, listen, stop banging the drum about we're this and we're that. Yeah, great history. But how many top clubs have had great history? It's about what you're doing on the pitch, and they're so below that, it's frightening. It really is. And I take no pleasure in saying it. I genuinely don't. I really don't, because I'm desperate to see it. And initially, when they had their issues, and I thought when Emery came on, when Emery first come to the club, I thought, yeah, brilliant. He's a manager who's going to introduce a bit of accountability in that if you don't perform, you're not going to play. Ozil, we've seen how he done that. But slowly but surely, all that he tried to achieve engulfed him. And he just didn't know what to do. He didn't know whether to stick or twist. He was trying to play out from the back one week. The next week it was 5 at the back. Then it was 4. This one was coming in. That one was coming in. And this is a manager who had a successful record. Yes, I know that the Premier League, and I always emphasise this. I think the Premier League asks questions of you no other league does, in terms of you've got a competitive, tough game every single week. There's no gimme as such, and I just don't think that this Arsenal squad and the hierarchy, they're lacking leadership there. We don't know who's making the decisions. We're talking about the fact that they had 5 captains, a captain group of 5 captains. I said to you before, if you have to have 5 captains, that means you ain't got one.
Do you know the interesting thing about the board? So that was a criticism you've regularly made, and it's undoubtedly a fair one. The interesting thing, though, when it comes to money, they have spent money. If you look at the lowest wage bill in the Premier League, that's Sheffield United on 13 million. The wage bill being traditionally the key indicator where you'll finish. Now, there are other underachievers. United are number 1 wage bill, and look where they are. But Arsenal, 101 million compared to Sheffield United's 13 million. They're the 4th highest wage bill in the league. They went and got Emery, on paper a decent appointment. So I know money and spending money doesn't guarantee good decisions, but the board are trying to spend. Remember a couple of years ago under Wenger in the stadium time, they weren't spending money. They've actually started spending money a little bit of late, certainly to be doing better than they're doing, and they're just not making the right decisions with that money.
Well, exactly, and this is my point. Who's making the decisions? You know, who's part of
is?
I couldn't tell you. I genuinely couldn't tell you, because it seems to change every month. There's always initially a dude comes in and he has played underneath Emery, so you're thinking, okay, they're building something. They wanted to get that chap from Rome, I can't think of his name, as someone who'd worked. That's it. He'd worked with Emery at Valencia and in Spain before. They couldn't get him in, so you're thinking, okay, now where are you going? But I keep emphasising, so much changes. Mislintat comes in, and a great when they initially brought him in, Casidas, I thought, oh wow, that's a brilliant signing. Bearing in mind all those brilliant players, and his nickname was Diamond Eye in terms of all those brilliant players he unearthed. So I thought that's good. Bearing in mind that Arsenal don't have the financial muscle. I know you're talking about the money that they spend, but they don't have the financial muscle to compete with the likes of City. So I'm thinking, okay, develop your own players. It's a great place to come and play football, so people will want to come to the Premier League. They want to come to London. You can say it's a nonsense, but that's what they want to do. They want to live in London. So they have got all those things going in their favour. But then suddenly Mislintat goes because he's effectively not given the job that he was told. They had Maurice Volz, who was their German scout for 4 years as well. He leaves the club. Steve Bold gets reassigned to another job. It's always changing all the time. And then when you're hearing about Kroenke and his son coming in and saying, listen, Arsenal, we've made top-class signings. They're not top-class signings. And you can talk about £100 million spent on Pepe and Salibas, the young centre-half from St Etienne. They loan him straight back. And I don't even think he's getting into their team at the moment. So you're thinking £30 million spent on what is potentially going to do it. And Pepe, it wasn't... We need to clarify this. They have not paid £70 million up front. They've paid it in instalments, and that's why they got the deal done. But you're looking at him and you're thinking, I'm not quite sure what he adds.
No. Diamond Eye. It's not the catchiest
Diamond Eye, that's it.
Not the catchiest nickname. Maybe the German translation's better, but anyway, he's gone. For people listening, Gary, who wouldn't have seen it, and they obviously remember the Xhaka situation, the Ozil substitution, you might just describe how petulant was this, how galling was this, how big a deal is this going to be in the morning?
Oh well, listen, it will get legs, there's no doubt, and the Arsenal fans will be absolutely seething with it. Bearing in mind that it's still so raw what Xhaka done, and they made a decision to take Ozil off, and he's been taken off under Ljungberg before. And when he did it in previous games, he started shouting at Mertesacker on the bench. I mean, the lack of strength there as a manager to allow a player to do that to you is beyond me. But then anyway, the substitution's made. He's in around the halfway line. Arsenal, they're out of the game, but nevertheless, they want to make a positive substitution, want to chase it in the last few moments. He ambles off. Suddenly the boos start. He actually started walking slower. It looked like he was moonwalking at one stage. He was going backwards. And then he comes off and he volleys his gloves into the supporters, and you're just thinking, you just don't help yourself. And when you're talking about wage bills and stuff, that gives it a distorted one, doesn't it? That one of your players is getting 350 grand a week here, where he would not get that at any other club in the world.
Yeah, there's your highest earner.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I mean, you would think, even if you're Ozil, in a cynical way, just in a self-serving cynical way, you know what's happened to Xhaka a couple of months ago.
But on that, Joe, on that with Xhaka, and people think that they've just turned on the player, Arsenal were chasing the game. They needed to make a positive substitution, and he walked off Xhaka, and he got booed for it. Now everyone says, and I understand that in terms of what he said, that he's found it difficult, that the horrible messages that his family have been getting, which is abhorrent. It really is, and that should have criminal proceedings if anyone's threatened his family. But take that aside, he has never ever apologised for what he did that day in terms of swearing and telling the supporters to do one. He's just literally said an explanation as to why he did that. He feels no responsibility in terms of how he reacted, and nor did Ozil there. And this is the problem, is that they're the most self-rewarding group of players I think I've ever seen. I genuinely mean that, and they're the weakest group I've ever seen. You think about selfies when they beat Leicester, that time here, that late Danny Welbeck winner to beat them 2-1 in the season that Leicester won the league, and they thought they'd won the league. Selfies in the changing room, celebrating, jumping around, literally had the champagne out. Ended up finished 10 points behind Leicester. And this is the problem you have, is that there's a culture at Arsenal that's rotten. It is, and that's not to say they're not great guys and they're not good footballers, because they are, but as a collective, it's rotten. It really is.